Before we get started with this episode of the Artists and Emotions podcast, I just want to let everybody know that this podcast is no longer just on Spotify anymore. If you've been with us for any length of time, you may have recognized that we started this podcast on Spotify, but now we are on Apple Podcast as well as iHeartRadio, basically everywhere else podcasts are available. Now, also, before we get started with this episode with the lovely Sophie Jordan Collins, I just want to let everybody know that this episode does contain subject matter in regards to mental health, in regards to eating disorders, and in regards to just talking about places in our own lives where things do get a bit more dark, and in some ways, the dark side of the entertainment industry. If these are things that you find uncomfortable or you don't necessarily want to listen to, I do not recommend listening to this episode of the podcast. But for everybody else, let's get started. Welcome to the Artists and Emotions podcast. My name is Cody Alexander Curtis. I'm your host, and I have with me today award-winning actress Sophie Jordan Collins. She is obviously, we'll get into the state of you being an award-winning actress here in a bit, but she is also a content creator and the host of the Acting Like an Actor podcast, which for any of you who are interested in knowing a little bit more of what the entertainment industry is like, and specifically how people who have found a certain level of success are sort of sustaining themselves and keeping themselves going, I would highly, highly recommend it. Not only are the guests fantastic, but one thing I've got to commend you on is it's one of the big things why I started this is that I was irritated by the fact that the talk around mental health in the entertainment space, there'd be a celebrity that came out every 3 to 4 years, but then we just wouldn't hear about it. And a podcast like yours that's out and about, it really does keep the conversation going. And I appreciate the fact that you are doing that. But enough about me. How are you doing today, Sophie?
I'm doing good, Cody. I recorded an episode for my podcast earlier as well. So, and you know how it is. It's always fun listening to others speak and listening to people's stories. And there's something so powerful. It's so sad, but I feel like how often do we really like sit down for an hour and have an intentional conversation with somebody? That's kind of the beauty of podcasting, is it forces you to do that in a way. So I'm feeling good. I always love sitting and chatting and having intentional conversations. So how are you doing, Cody?
I'm doing very well, and I'm glad you brought that up because let's face it, the industry we're in is very, very hustle and bustle, hustle culture oriented. Which is, I mean, depending on who you ask, me being one of them, is a bit of a problem. But that's actually, funny enough, that's actually one of the other things I want to dive into while you're here. But I'm doing very, very well. I've been excited to talk to you because it's funny. I came across you and what you're all about basically twice. The first time I saw you, uh you'd linked a video to your YouTube channel where you were talking about what it was like being an actor in LA. And for me, like, I thought the information was interesting, but it wasn't the thing that grabbed me. The thing that grabbed me was when I saw a video that you posted talking about how you've sort of oriented yourself in a productive way where you feel so good about your life, so good and productive about your life right now, that it's just been sort of uphill in like the best way possible for you and your productivity and your mental health. And you talked about Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I am obsessed with that book. But yeah, so I'm glad to have you here, Sophie.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Cody. I will tell you too, I did watch a few episodes of your podcast, and
Did you now?
I did. And I think what you're doing is incredible too, because like you said, there are a couple acting podcasts, but there's not an acting podcast that specifically focuses on mental health. And it's so prevalent for everybody, but especially in our industry. So I doing it, and again keeping that conversation relevant. And I also, you mentioned earlier how like every few years you hear about a big celebrity, which is true. I agree with that. But, and this is a big part of the heart behind my podcast too, is like the everyday working actor and working filmmaker,
Mm.
not all A-list celebrities, and they deserve to have a voice and they deserve to have their stories told too. So I love that you're giving people platforms to talk about their mental health and their art, even at all stages of our industry, even if you're not A-lister or whatever that even means.
Yeah, which I think my perspective might be a little bit different because I grew up in the state of Maine and there's no industry here whatsoever. And everybody I know saying that they live in hustle culture is probably an understatement because if you're an actor over here, you're not just an actor. You've got to be an actor and a writer and a casting. You basically, every position that you have to, that there is behind the camera, if you're an actor, you also have to do those things. Uh, but where I want to get started with you, Sophie, is I find that with creatives, with actors in particular, there are 2 points in our lives that sort of shape us. There is the initial point, which is getting into the performing arts in a way where it's an enjoyable thing that we do. Like it's something we do either because our friends are doing it or our parents admire that we're doing it. And then there's the really big defining moment when we discover the reason why, or it's like a particular production we're a part of or that we see that make us realize this is where we're meant to be, like pushing forward for the rest of our lives. So what were those two moments for you?
The moment that I decided I like wanted to pursue this industry, is that one of the,
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
like what was the big defining moment for you?
Yeah, I think for me, honestly, like growing up, I knew as a kid, like when I was 15 years old, I started taking acting for film classes. I grew up in Michigan, so I'm not from LA. Got my first agent in the Midwest when I was 15, and then moved out here when I was 18. But prior to that, I was doing like theater as a little girl, and I was really, really shy. And I've always been like super self conscious and super aware of people around me. And so that just made me like so shy as a kid, but the stage was the one place I could kind of come alive because I wasn't being me. That's my biggest like core struggle is one of my biggest core struggles is I just don't naturally like love myself, as sad as that sounds. And I think that's the case for a lot of us. You have to put work into it. But I
Yeah.
just from gosh, from the time I was a little girl, I don't know, I never liked myself. I was constantly comparing myself to other people and I never felt good enough. But when I could be somebody else, that's where I felt free. And it was so funny. People would see the school plays and be like, oh my gosh, you were so like outgoing up there. You don't even talk in class. Like you won't even read aloud. And yeah, it was kind of the one place I always came alive. And as I was a teenager, I started doing more performance things, and I did this acting performance when I was 15, and somebody came up to me afterwards, and multiple people came up to me and they were like, girl, like you're really, really good at this. Like you're really good at this. Cause I never really thought about it, just didn't feel realistic to do it as a career. But as people said that to me, just something inside of me clicked like, maybe I can do this. So I did a lot of research on my own. And again, I was 15 at the time. So I found like agents where I was living in the Midwest and acting classes and all the things and kind of just like presented it to my parents. I was like, I'm about to be 16. I'm about to drive. I'm basically an adult. Kind of pitched it to them, and my mom was really supportive and helped me get started. And then as I was 16 and throughout high school, I got very lucky, did a Meisner program for a little over a year when I was in high school, really like dove into the craft, started doing local commercials in Michigan, things like that. That was a very long-winded answer, but basically, I guess the moment it was just an overtime thing. Like as a kid, it was the one place, acting and performing is the one place still to this day that I truly feel so alive. Like there is no feeling like when you're in the headspace of a character with another actor and you're so present, there's nothing like that.
Yeah, like and first of all, like kudos to you for being so proactive with your career, especially at that age. Uh it's just it's incredible, especially knowing just how difficult this industry is for all of us who are in it. There's that, and as far as long-winded answers, that's what we're all about on this show. But that is absolutely incredible, and I believe if I'm remembering correctly from your story, which I watched on YouTube, you moved out to LA when you turned 18, right?
Yeah, so, I moved to Orange County first because I was actually
Gotcha.
I was actually coming out here for college to study acting in Orange County. So I officially moved to LA when I was 19, but I did come out to California at 18.
Okay, very cool. Now, along with all the sort of your particular journey that you've been on, I gotta ask, when, in terms of like your own personal self-development bug, obviously mentioned James Clear and Atomic Habits before, when did that really start being a major part of your life? Because obviously now it's like it's a part of who you are, like across the board.
Yeah, it is, Cody, and I'm very lucky that I'm 22. So like by the time I was in high school, like YouTube and social media was already kind of a big thing. I really did start getting into it honestly like high school and even like middle school. I remember watching those things and my friends would like make fun of me for it in high school and stuff like that. My little like routines and just like the things I would do and the way I would talk. And I almost like in high school didn't feel like I fit in because of that, because I was like working on myself and wanted to do these things and was so curious as to why I acted in certain ways. And it made me feel so weird. And then obviously like moving out to LA and becoming an adult, you realize I feel a lot of us you kind of fall into that world. And it's only now that I'm realizing like it was actually a blessing. And I think that getting into self-development at such a young age actually helped me in a lot of ways. And obviously, it's like things have changed a lot. I'm definitely not the same person I was when I'm 16, and self development is a lifelong journey. Are we ever really going to know ourselves? We're constantly changing. But I definitely did dabble into it at a young age, which is kind of interesting. I was in high school, I was very big into like Joe Dispenza, like manifesting. If you speak it, it can happen, which I don't necessarily subscribe to now, but yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so James Clear, personal development. Is there anything that you're either reading or listening to now that you would like? I guess that's the question. Are you currently listening to or reading anything in particular right now?
At the moment, I'm kind of on a business kick at the moment. So I just finished
Ah,
Alex Hormozzi's $100 million offers, and now I'm on $100 million leads. I've been on a weird, yeah, business is always something I've kind of had an interest in as well. And obviously, we're like the entertainment industry is a business. So I think it's important to understand that world as well. But
yeah.
yeah, that's recently kind of been my weird little obsession is all things businessy. So I've been listening to a lot of like Alex Hormozzi and things like that.
I mean, I don't think that's a big deal at all. In fact, I'm kind of glad that you brought that up because now that I know that that's going to be the next part of our conversation is business because I'm obsessed with that man. I am I think I mean the podcast that he's done in particular with Chris Williamson, which that is also a man just in general I love listening to. But the podcast that Alex has done, each one I've listened to probably 3 different times, just because the information that Alex gives, not just in like the act, like in a business sense across the board, like you said, acting, entertainment, it is a business. I don't think there's anybody in the business world quite like Alex right now, even now. And his information is just any actors or people who are in the entertainment industry who want to know how you can sort of elevate yourself as far as being in this business, do yourself a favor, step away from listening to actors and people in the business. Listen to business people. Listen to people like Chris Williamson and Alex Hormozzi and just people who are out in the world of business outside of entertainment, because the one thing I have found is that the details of the entertainment industry and that business, they are different, but the principles across the board for business in general, they're the exact same as they would be for any other business.
Absolutely. And I think I'm glad you said that, Cody. I think a lot of creatives, and it's easy to do because we are creatives, lose that. They don't think of the business part. And if you don't have that business part, if you could be the most creative, most talented person in the world, but if you don't have your business side, if nobody knows you're the most talented, most creative person in the world, you have to have that part as well.
Exactly. So, what would you, out of all the things that you've listened to from Alex, what would you say is the thing that, when you first heard it, was the thing where you're like, okay, this is something that I'm going to be applying moving forward? What was like the big thing for you?
I think for me, I don't know that I applied it, but something he said that really like resonated with me was he talks a lot about the like lonely season as you're leveling up. And I don't think I'm necessarily in that anymore, but I was for a while when I first moved to LA, and I was just again going through a lot of like self-development and shedding a lot of beliefs and a lot of ththings that I went through. And I the people around me didn't think the same way that I thought anymore. Again, I was in college. I was surrounded by like 18 and 19-year-olds like drinking and partying all the time. And I was like, not about that life. I knew what I wanted, and I knew how to get there. And I knew that that wasn't the way. And so I was surrounded by all of these people that were just not acting in a way that resonated with me. And I felt really alone and really weird because I didn't want to do that stuff. I just wanted to act. I wanted to be creative. And Alex talks a lot about kind of the lonely season and leveling up, and knowing, and Chris does too, and knowing that that's kind of just a part of the process where it's like your old friends are not the same as you, but you haven't found your new group of friends yet. And so you're kind of in this season where it's like you're just kind of alone because you haven't found those friends. And now, luckily, I'm at the point, I've been in LA a few years now, and I do have creative friends that are amazing and are so strong in all of their beliefs and stuff too. But I did go through a lonely season, and he really helped me to kind of get through that and just trust the process with that.
That is incredible. And the success that you've had over the past, I would say the past like 2 to 3 years it has been notable. That's the one thing I can say, just in terms of your growth as a person and an actor. And one thing that I have to commend you for, uh, that you do with your podcast and that you talk about with your guests, specifically when I really picked up on it, it's when you had Rose on and you guys talked about, it's so important. Like, one of the big things that we as creatives, as actors, as musicians, as models, as whatever it is, we can get so obsessive with what we're doing that it gets to the point where it's not healthy. And for me, the big takeaway for me as an actor was the fact, and it's a principle that I subscribed to a long time ago, is that a lot of the times the people that we as actors are trying to play or we go to, is they are the mom from across the street. They are the construction worker who is working a 9 to 5. They're all of these regular everyday people. And the thing is, those people we're trying to play are not actors who are trying to study acting to become better actors so they can tell stories about actors. They're just trying to live their lives. And so having a life outside of the business is just so critically important. And so I've been wanting to have a chance to say thank you for bringing this up regularly, because I do think it is such an important topic that is still not talked about as much as it should be.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know. How are you supposed to play a certain human being who has lived a life if you haven't lived any life yourself? That's kind of been my big thing. And I've had to be very intentional with forcing myself to have a life outside of acting, especially just because, I went to school for theater. I've known that this is what I wanted to do. So it is easy to get wrapped up in that. Excuse me. And especially when you're in LA, where that is kind of the mindset for a lot of people, is like, if you work hard enough at this craft, if you don't give up, if you're an actor, if you put your all in, there's no way you're gonna fail. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, there are no rules in our business, and like, if you know the right people, and if you don't, but yeah, I do think that's important. And I think, yeah, for all of you actors out there, I always tell people, if you're getting burnt out, if you don't want to do this anymore, you're allowed to take a break. You take a month off from submitting and from acting, like, you're going to be okay. Time goes by quick. And if you need to step back, step back. Do not drag yourself into the ground, because that's only going to come back to bite you in the butt.
No, you're absolutely right. You're, once again, absolutely right across the board. So next question I have for you is, what have you found has been the most difficult part of being in Los Angeles? Because I mean, for anybody who wants to know, Sophie does have a YouTube channel. I do highly recommend you go check it out and maybe like and subscribe. That'd be a really, really neat thing to do too. But out of all the things that you've talked about, what would you say as your 22-year-old self now, what is currently the most difficult thing about living in Los Angeles?
Yeah, still to this day, I just find LA so overstimulating. This is going to sound mildly sad, but I almost like can't relax here. Quite literally, like even in my apartment, it's just so stimulating here. I mean, Cody and I were talking earlier. I can't remember if we were recording, but like my neighbor was like playing the effing saxophone, so we had to push this back a half hour. Like there's so much going on here all of the time, just in terms of like noises. And I know that's just city life in general, but it's overstimulating, yes, because it's a city, and it's also overstimulating to me because everybody's in the industry here, which is amazing, and like I do love that, but it's also it's like my favorite part and my least favorite part in a sense, because I almost like can't get away. And like when you meet people a lot of the time, as opposed to just like chatting about like life experiences and whatever, it's like, what are you working on? Well, I'm working on this. Well, let me show you my Instagram, and I worked with this person, and I was on this set with this person. And it's like, okay, great. And like I do love hearing about your life, but also like, you know, can we just chat about other things too? Because we are human beings at the end of the day. And like, I don't know, there's just such a mentality here of like, I have to prove why I'm worthy to everybody. And it's like, see, but no, you don't. Like, you're worthy because you're a human being. And so stand firm in that. And I just get irritated with the like striving mindset here. And it's easy to fall into that too. So, yeah, I would just overall say that it's overstimulating. The business side, the city, it's just a lot. Sometimes I just miss the Midwest, and I'm mildly jealous you live in Maine because, yeah, like slower pace of life there. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Pros and
I will say, yeah, it is slower paced life here, unless you've got a brain like mine that doesn't stop.
no, fair enough.
Like,
And yeah, I suspect we think the same, Cody. So that would probably be my problem too. Because yeah, even when I go home to Michigan to visit my family, it's still like I'm like not busy, but I feel busy because my brain just doesn't shut off.
I mean, you've got a type A personality, which that is something I'm finding so much more common than I thought I would with starting this podcast. But type A personality isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just all about there are priorities and there are seasons, which is, once again, it's another big thing that both Alex and Chris talk about. And once again, like if we're talking about business extremes in terms of hustle, Alex Hormozy is definitely one. But the one thing I'm glad that he does, which unfortunately, when it comes to social media or influencers or business people in general, a lot of people don't use the phrase, which once again, all credit to Alex, and it's okay. It's like you don't have to be going a million miles an hour, and it's okay. And like you said, you can always take a step back. And I before I get into this next question, because I want to talk about the fact that you're an award-winning actress, but all within what you are allowed to share right now in regards to what you won the award for.
Yeah, so not much, and to be honest, I don't know much about it either. It's quite literally like 2 days ago it happened, but it's just for a like a I guess it would be, yeah, a short, because it wasn't a feature, but it was like a long short. It's like a 35-minute short, and it went
Okay.
yeah, the Indie Short Fest here in Los Angeles. But yeah, just it's just a film festival award. So yeah, we'll see. Festival takes place in April, and more to come from that. But
Very cool. What was the onset experience like for that project?
um, absolutely incredible. So the project was called Burden. It's directed by a guy named James Nanny, who um we kind of it's so cool, that whole crew of us, we're actually going to be doing another project here soon, another short, and then another feature is talked about too. So you know how it is in the film world, it's so cool when you get a good group of you guys that really work well together and you can continue creating. But the project was called Burden, and it's about a Vietnam veteran. And James himself, he's not a Vietnam veteran, but he is a veteran. And so it was just kind of talking about the experience of this man came home from Vietnam, and like his entire face was burned. And I play his wife. And so the film's called Burden because it's kind of discussing how he comes home, not only is he burned, but he's also like mentally different. Like he lashes out on me and things like that. And so it's almost like he comes home and he's like a burden to his wife after the war. Like he's so different. He's angry. He has night terrors. And the story actually does revolve a lot around my character. Her name's Mary Ellen, and just her experience of like trying to still love her husband even though he looks different. So she's struggling with like attraction to him, as sad as that sounds. And she's struggling attraction to him as well just because he acts so different. And yeah, it was a really, really beautiful film. Um, my co-star Mike was really great too. The entire crew was amazing, and also just playing that type of character. Obviously, it took place in like the '60s. Yeah, it was just overall a really incredible experience. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I can't even imagine. Well, I can, actor to actor, what it must have been like to be able to get into the mindset and heart of a character like that. It's like, I don't know about you, but I know that as actors, everybody's got different goals and everybody's got different areas that they want to be in. Hardcore dramas is really, for me, the place where I find the most interestingly unique characters, specifically that I want to play. And for you, obviously I cannot speak to your mindset, but all I can say is I can only imagine how wonderful it was to, from what you've said, to be on that set, to be able to play that character, to play out that story. And obviously things are going really well for it. So just congratulations across the board.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an exciting project too. So I know I called it a short, and that's why I kind of like stuttered. So it is like he's entering it into festivals as a short, but really what it is he's written 8 episodes of this, and we kind of filmed the first one, so it's almost like a pilot in a sense too that he's taking the festival route to see how it does. But ideally, like he wants to make this like a show and a series. So
Oh,
yeah.
that is incredible. Creativity, man. That's all I can say. Creativity. All right. So next thing I want to shift over is sort of talking about, and of course, I've built this podcast out to be sort of a safe space, so share as much or as little as you want. But what has, from the time that you decided to come out to Los Angeles to now, what has what has your mental health journey been like, and what are the things that you feel have made the greatest impact in terms of just helping you along, keeping things sustainable?
Yeah, so to be honest, Cody, my mental health is very interesting because I'm a big dissociator and I'm a big like get busy, busy, busy. So I don't sit with my a lot. There are a lot of people that I know have like different episodes and really like soak into their stuff and even just like talk about their problems with other people a lot. But I'm just not like that. Even when I'm going through something, I don't really tell people. I kind of keep it inside, and I a lot of the time will just busy myself so much that I don't think about it. Um, which I've learned is not healthy because then it comes out in other areas. Like I've had moments where I've done that so bad, and then I can think of a particular moment. This was maybe 2 years ago where I was like going through some stuff, just like I got in a really bad car accident and my car was totaled, and like I was having some problems with the place I was currently living in, and I just kept shoving it down, not thinking about it, not telling anybody about it. And I was at Forever 21 trying to return a pair of boots, and they like wouldn't accept my return. I start bawling, just crying, and like uncontrollable. And I was so embarrassed and I couldn't stop myself. Um, and I later, maybe it was a panic attack, whatever. I know sometimes people can cry when that happens. Actually, that's a frequent thing I would say is I cry at inappropriate times, and that's usually when I know, like, okay, Sophie, there's like something going on here, because I just like won't be able to hold it in. But I've tried to be more intentional with it. I've gone through my bouts of therapy and things like that. I had a therapist I loved for about a year, and she quit a year ago out of nowhere. We built this like rapport, and I was like, "Girl, are my problems really that big?" Like, I don't know, no, but it's kind of sad. But yeah, so that's kind of how I deal with things. And I've realized now it's really good that I know that that's how I deal with things is by busying myself, busying myself, busying myself. Because when I start doing those tendencies where I start just finding myself doing random stuff, I'm at random events, like doing random things on my phone. I'm like, maybe I should start an agency, or maybe I should launch my own production company, or just like random things that are, yes, cool things, but like not for this season of life. It's usually because I'm trying to distract myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the beautiful thing about opening up this conversation is because very much like we as creatives and what we want is very individualized. The whole mental health aspect about being on this path is also very, very individualized. And I think you might be the first person, as far as a guest is concerned, who has had that sort of a response to in terms of how you're just taking care of yourself. Because I mean, once again, it's incredible. And for any of you who are listening, Sophie briefly brought it up, but I'm just going to say it again that as far as this podcast is concerned, if you're somebody or you know a loved one who needs some help, I do have resources down below in the description of this podcast. So we've talked about the mental health. We talked about sort of what your journey has been like in Los Angeles. Let's sort of break away. Let's break away from like all of the like actor related things for a split second. When you're not on set, which for anybody who follows Sophie's Instagram, that is a rarity. When you are not like in sort of the trenches of being on set and working on stuff, how do you spend your free time? Like, what would you say are some enjoyable hobbies, if there are any? Which, if you don't have any, that's cool too.
Yeah, I've joined the pickleball. You know what that is, Cody, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I do know.
Um, well, on like the East Coast or like Midwest, they're like, what is that? But I've gotten into pickleball over the past couple of months, which funny enough, I actually did a pickleball commercial and I got some like free paddles and stuff. And then
Okay.
because I started playing for the commercial. So I play. I wish I could say I go every week, but I go like every other week. There's a cute little group that plays that I like to play in Burbank. If anybody's interested, we play pickleball in Burbank on Thursdays. It's really fun. And it's like a
Yeah.
film crew that do it. So it's fun. We play for a few hours. So I really like playing pickleball. Um, I also fitness has always kind of been an outlet for me.
Yeah.
I've always liked that. I love running so much, but I'm actually injured right now. I haven't been able to do it for a few months, but that was always a big outlet for me as well. Yeah, I like classes. So I like pottery classes and just random things like that are always fun. Um, yeah.
Okay, very cool. You brought up fitness and you brought up running, which is great because that's also where my mindset's at. So I've got to ask, what is the furthest distance that you've run?
20 miles.
20 okay.
I was yeah, so I went into a marathon. And this is probably how I got injured is I just like again, like one of my best and worst qualities is I'm kind of impatient with things. And so I like things to be fast and I like to get results fast and like do things quick. So I would like not warm up before my runs. I just down some pre in the morning and just get going and knock out like 10 miles. And I would do that consistently. And then all of a sudden my hip just like couldn't do it anymore. And I like really injured myself. But so I couldn't run the marathon, obviously. But yes, 20 miles.
Definitely.
Cody, what's yours?
I actually completed a marathon.
Okay, all right, Settle Flex. Which one did you do?
It's one that's here in Maine. It's called Coast to Coast. It was freezing, it was cold, and I think I put myself in an ice bath for probably 20 minutes after it was done because I could not feel my legs after it was over. Like it was bad.
Gosh, that's it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that feeling of like success after doing a marathon, and I really want to. How long did you train for it?
I trained 10 months. 10 months for
Okay.
it. Did it very slow. And after the it's so interesting how, especially being creative, you do something that's just insanely difficult as a creative person or a person in general. At least for a little bit, you're like, never doing that kind of thing ever again in my life. I actually want to start training to run a marathon again because uh, I think it's also to go with the fact that I can't say too much about it now, but I have been put onto a project as the lead of said project, and they want some specific fitness related things to go with that. And so that's probably another reason why I'm like, hey, want to run a marathon again? Let's see how this goes. Uh, but yeah, like it was painful, but it was absolutely worth it. And now, do you have any fitness goals for this year that you want to reach?
Nothing specifically. I actually, so this is a little bit of my story too. I don't want to say I had an eating disorder, but I struggled with some disordered eating in college where I quite literally lost like 30 pounds over a span of like 2 months. Um,
Huh, that sounds familiar.
yeah, part of it, yeah, I'm sorry if I know. Um, yeah, so that was like, and because of that, it sounds like not a big thing, but when you're a female,
Yeah.
losing that kind of weight, a lot of women who are anorexic, you lose like your menstrual cycle. That's kind of a sign that like your body's shutting down. And I did like lose my menstrual cycle and I have a lot of hormonal imbalances because of that time, despite the fact that I've gained back healthy weight. So this year, genuinely, I'm working with a holistic health coach and we're just really trying to focus on my hormones because for a long time I was training. If you scroll down on my Instagram, I was like, not to toot my own horn, but I was like 6% body fat, like kind of jacked for like 2 years, which was fine and it was great. But I really effed up my body in that period. This is when I was training for the marathon. I was also weightlifting. Um, and I looked great, but I was actually like kind of dying on the side. So this is another facade. People would always compliment me, "Oh my gosh, you're shredded, whatever." But just because you see somebody on the outside doesn't mean that they're doing well on the inside. And my health was actually really in the ground. My blood work came back around this time last year, like so effed up. So I've been working with a holistic coach to get my hormones back, which means less intensive, like not as much. I can't really do long runs anymore. No, like hit workouts, the things that I love that really get my blood boiling. It's more like yoga and walking and stuff like that is what I have to focus on this year, which is not exactly my vibe, but anyway.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a longer conversation we can have because as far as being actors in this industry, body image is I don't think I've come across a single actor in this industry who has not at one point or another judged their image or tried to change it or gone to some level of unhealthy either eating disorder or like you disordered eating or like myself. Like I was also that way in college. Like it got to the point where I got home for Christmas vacation and I was part of the varsity cross country team. My parents looked at me. They're like, "You look like a skeleton. Like we don't even recognize you." And for me, it's I know a lot of conversation has been talked about when it comes to women's body image inside of this industry, and luckily that has been changing. But for me, as a guy, I am still kind of hurt, not just for me, but for other people that I know that when it comes to men's body image in this industry, whether it comes to Disney princes or superheroes or anything else, the body image issues for men, it's almost as bad as it is for women, especially if actors have the genetics or personality or whatever it is to be leading men. And leading men are supposed to almost always be hot.
Yeah, I would honestly, Cody, I know you said like I would say it is just as bad with women. I can see it with a lot of my guy actor friends here, like their tendencies. Again, I said I struggled with disordered eating. I know what it looks like. I see it among some of my male actor friends. They're like scared to eat like certain foods because it doesn't fit in their macros and things like that. And I get it for a certain time, but also like that's not necessarily healthy. Like you shouldn't be scared of bread. It's not going to kill you. Like little things like that. There's a fine line between discipline and disordered, and I don't know. And I know the pressure for males to keep up. And you're right. I think too. I just had a conversation with a girlfriend about this. How it's like, in the modeling industry for women, you have like plus size women, like plus size models. I've never seen a plus size male model in my life. I can't think of one off the top of my head. I
Yeah, that is crazy, and it's so interesting. And this is another reason why I say anybody who's listening who is in the same industry that we are, I highly recommend if you're somebody who how do I want to phrase this? If you're somebody who wishes things could be different within this industry, the one podcast that I've listened to that has made me just feel so much better is listening to Alex Huberman. and his like scientific approach to everything. Because the fact of the matter is, if you listen to the smartest people in the world, the people who have a good head on their shoulders, who are giving good information, it's like you can, as long as you're everything is like balanced and ready to go, you can get in incredible shape and look fantastic and still like have a life that you enjoy. And that's another thing that I want to bring forward with this podcast, because once again, the conversation around mental health is super important in this industry. One of the biggest things in regards to mental health that every actor suffers from is body image issues, or just image issues in general.
Yeah. And truthfully, it's understandable too, because as actors, it's part of what we bring to the table. Our look is a huge part of it in terms of what characters we can play, what we bring to roles, etc. So there is that, like, I think body image affects everybody, but I do think it especially can affect actors and people in our industry.
Yeah, agreed. And one thing I just want to share is that there are there's not just one kind of lead actor or lead actress. Like, uh, just from personal experience, I have seen in my own life going from basically a dog on stage to where now everything I'm getting is lead work, and most of it I have found is not from like looks or body type. It's just being a good person that people want to work with, and having a good personality and being kind and listening to people. If you have a good personality, and like, once again, art is subjective and people need various things for whatever their projects are, but if you can just take the time to get to know people on sets, or just get to know people inside of the audition room, a lead role will be in your future somewhere. It might not look like the traditional leading role thing, but you'll have your opportunity. Just being a good person will bring that opportunity to you, and working hard also helps.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's so important. Just like, yeah, I always tell actors, yeah, just like do the things you know to do and like trust the process. Be in classes, submit, get your agents, do all of that. Be lovely to work with, and you'll do amazing things. Like that's just the way it is. If you put the work in and you're in the right place, yeah.
Yeah, it's also going circling back to health. If you take care of your health, you'll have longevity in this industry.
It's so much more than looks. That's the thing. And so that with me got to the point where I was like, I'm 5'9", and this might sound bad to some people, but I don't hate the way I looked when I was 115 pounds. Some people told me I was skinny, but I look back on it and I'm like, kind of pretty. But is it healthy for me to be in that state? No, it's not, because my hormones start freaking out. I have no libido. Like all of these just weird hormonal things happen to me, and it's just not healthy at a cellular level. And I want to live a long, healthy life. And so yeah, it comes back. Your health is so much more important than the way you look.
Yeah, and in if you like, just taking away all of this discussion about looks in regards to the industry and everything else, if you feel healthy and you prioritize your health across the board, the one thing that I've noticed, as like, let's face it, in an industry that is around acting and modeling, you do have to take care of your looks. Like, that is part of it. But the big thing is that the reason why you look after your looks when you feel so healthy, it's not for the reasons that it was before you actually started taking care of your health as a priority.
Yeah.
Like, it is more of a scientific thing, which is, once again, big reason why I'm thankful to people like Chris Williamson, and for people like Alex Huberman, who are just disseminating information for free, by the way.
Yeah. I know. I love Andrew Huberman, and he's also incredible too. I liked what you said about the fitness thing, because I know he's like jacked, looks amazing, and he's like, yeah, I work out like 45 minutes 5 times a week, and like that's it. He's very much like a, yeah, just everything in moderation, which I love. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've been a fan of what he said is his whole conversation around caffeine. It's like that for me, because I'm last year I had a bit of a problem with caffeine consumption. I'm not like, but the thing that's sort of blurred out in the background is About 2 weeks ago, I picked up this thing called Liquid Labs that I put into. It's basically think Liquid IV, except number one has less sugar content, a little bit less salt content, and more of magnesium and coconut water and a whole bunch of other electrolyte scientifically backed things. I put that into my water first thing in the morning, have a glass of that, have a glass of water, and I'm good to go until probably 5 o'clock in the evening. It's like, and once again, I feel Chris Williamson talked about this, and I think it is important. I think caffeine consumption is going to be the thing that is sort of talked about that was sort of a danger to everybody in the next like 100, 200 years. Because, I mean, you talked about it. I briefly mentioned it. Caffeine consumption, especially in this industry, it's a lot.
When you brought up caffeine, that was my exact thought. I was like, the film industry runs on caffeine. Every set, even if they're crafty, sucks. They have coffee. People are drinking coffee, not just in the morning. Like, it's an all day thing when you're on set. Energy drinks, all of these things. I was really bad last year too, Cody. That was, again, my like holistic coach. One big thing we have is I'm not doing any caffeine right now, which was a huge change for me. I went through literal withdrawal for like a week where I was like, this sucks, but I know that this is needs to happen because the fact that I feel like crap without this, I know. And it's like people don't think about it either, but that just throwing it out there for people, the healthy limit every day is like 400 milligrams or less of caffeine. And if
Yeah.
drinks like Bang, there's 300 milligrams of caffeine in that. Like you're already almost at your max for the day. Yeah, it's crazy.
And once again, I find every film set that I find, every crew person, there's a phrase they all use, which is film sets are run on coffee and energy drinks. Like, that's what they all say. Because, I mean, a good portion of the time, there's 12-hour overnight shoots, which, look, I understand the necessity at the same time.
No, it's like that's kind of the battle with it too, Cody, is like we do work crazy hours. So it's like I've been lucky where I've only been doing this thing for like a month. And so I hadn't done any caffeine, but I did an overnight shoot last week and not gonna lie, I had a cold brew because I literally
Yeah.
through the night. So I guess it's like film people just use it when you need it. Maybe try to not drink so much on your days off. Like use it in I don't know.
Exactly. I think that's a solid point, and I 100% agree with you. Like, all of that is great. It's also because, I mean, let's face it, most of the time we're awake for the first 16 hours of the day, and then we're going into an overnight shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully, the one thing I find with the actors is most of the time we're not working on overnight shoots 90% of the time, but crew people are, which, first of all, let's just like give a big old shout out to every crew person who has ever been on a film set, because seriously, I still to this day do not think they get the credit that they deserve.
No, they don't. Like they get there earlier than us, they leave there later than us, like all of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and in post production, let's face it, we don't have movies without editors and sound people.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, this is one thing that a good friend of mine, Sarah Massey, and I were talking about. We both agree we wish more actors would take a little bit of time, step away from the acting bucket, and learn how editors and filmmakers and how all of that stuff works. Because if you have even like the simplest amount of knowledge about it, it makes you a better actor for crew people. Because if the big thing that Sarah brought up is the thing that she notices on so many sets, because she's a cinematographer and an editor, and she does basically everything with a camera. But the thing that she said that she notices is hair placement. Like, hair placement for her is a big deal because she sees it everywhere. And so when because okay, so she does everything with the camera. She's also an actor too.
Yeah.
But so what she tries to do is her movements and her hair placement is very decisive of where it's going to be in every single take. So that way, when it gets to the editing room, they're not having to have a nightmare of a time trying to fix things together.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree too. I think it's so beneficial as an actor to learn all sides of the industry. Even like PA or something, just so you can learn a little bit. Yeah, it's extremely beneficial.
Yeah. And I mean, especially now where if we're just talking about social media, everybody does everything. And so having a knowledge of how everything works, even if you're not, it's like a jack of many trades, but a master of one. It's like if you can be an actor who is a master of your craft, but knows a little bit about everything, it will, I mean, honestly, I find that the ability to just have that conversation with crew people about whether it's equipment or whether it's sets that they've been on or blocking, it actually makes the ability to network and build connections a lot easier. I know for me personally, it's camera people because I'm a tech nerd. Like that's the best way I can describe it. I love cameras and lenses. Now I want to talk about Atomic Habits because I know that is a book that you have mentioned more than once, whether it was your YouTube channel or social media. What was the portion of Atomic Habits that you felt you could connect to the most, or the section that impacted you the most when you were reading it?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing with Atomic Habits is just the like replace it's the it's I can't even remember what he calls it, but it's like habit stacking or whatever. I can't remember what he calls it in there, but it's like, for example, you already like brush your teeth in the morning, so why don't you brush your teeth in the morning but then also read a inspirational daily devotion while you brush your teeth in the morning, something to give you inspiration for the day. Or like you already drink your coffee in the morning, but you want to start journaling. Okay, so you're going to habit stack journaling onto now you drink coffee every morning, and instead of drinking coffee every morning and scrolling on your effing phone, you're going to drink coffee every morning and you're going to journal. Like I really subscribe to the habit stacking, and I think that makes it a lot easier to implement new habits and get rid of old ones.
Yeah, and I think in a world where, let's be fair here, the world that we live in is very, very hustle oriented. It's not just an entertainment industry thing anymore. Like everything, especially since the idea of starting a side hustle is, number one, it is very important because the economy in today's world is, that's an entirely new conversation to be having.
Yeah.
But Atomic Habits is such an important book for that, but also for the 2 minute rule. It's like the ability to organize your life and to taking overly daunting tasks and just push it down to bite-sized pieces. It makes, while it may not make things easier, it does make things simpler. I want to say thank you once again for the Acting Like an Actor podcast, because I know I've shouted out, I think 3 or 4 different times now in this one episode, but the connection that you are bringing to your listeners and the knowledge you're disseminating and just bringing the humanity back to the entertainment industry, I think is the best way that I can put it, is that making people realize that yes, it's like being a hard worker in this industry, it is baseline for being in this industry.
Yeah.
But then again, a lot of the humanity that people see from actors and creatives, that can sometimes be taken away. Number one, because of social media, but number two, also because we're, all of us are working on a met trillion ton of things that we don't necessarily get to talk to our friends and families as much as we would like to. So you bringing people who have had a certain amount of success onto your podcast and just having the conversation that, while yes, these are successful people who are actors or musicians or entrepreneurs in any kind of capacity, they're people too. And that's something, the bringing humanity back to the world in terms of the world of entertainment is something, it's something we all need right now, especially since something, let's see here, 2020 was a remarkable year for a few different reasons. uh but for me, that's one of the things where we all came together and connected through storytelling and through stories. But the ability to see the people who create those stories outside of them as just people is something for me that you've brought to your podcast that I don't see very often. And it's something I so appreciate as a fellow actor, as a fellow creative. So just across the board, thank you, Sophie Jordan Collins, for everything you're doing right now. That's the best way I can put it, in the most cheesy way I can put it, I guess.
Thank you, Cody. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, that truly is the heart behind acting like an actor, is just that, like, we're all acting like we know what we're doing. We're all, just acting. Yeah. Everybody, literally every human being, we're all just kind of pretending we know what we're doing. And at the end of the day, we're all more similar than we are different. Nobody's above you, nobody's below you. And yeah, just coming back to the humanity of it all. Cause it's so easy. And I do it too, to get, like you said, wrapped up in the projects you're doing, in money, in work. It's so easy to just like go all the time, but that's not like what ultimately fulfills you in life. Like at the end of the day, we're humans, and it's relationships, and it's the little things that matter. So yeah.
I think that's a phenomenal point for us to leave off on. So, Sophie, before we sort of leave off here, I am going to turn it back over to you to sort of share either any projects you've got coming up, or anything you want to shout out, or basically any last piece of advice, anything and everything that you would like to talk about for this last little bit. It's your time to shine.
Yeah, I think just some advice, or something that you focus a lot on this podcast, and that I would love to just reiterate to people, is like, you you can only come to your craft as whole as you are as a person. So it's so important to take care of yourself and to take care of your mental health. And again, if you need to step back from the industry, do that. The industry will always be here. You will not. And so take care of yourself. The more full your cup is with life, the better you will be as a creative. So it's totally okay to take a step back and, yeah, just do what you know to do. Trust the process and stay in your lane. Don't get too focused on what everybody's doing, what everybody's telling you. Do your thing, trust your gut, and yeah, make your life what you want it to be.
I think those are the perfect words to leave off on. So, Sophie, before we sort of wrap this podcast off, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find my podcast, Acting Like an Actor. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of the podcast platforms. And then you can follow me on Instagram, Sophie Jordan Collins, YouTube, Sophie Jordan Collins, TikTok, Sophie Jordan Collins.
Perfect. That was okay. That was an actor voice, and I love it. All right, I will put Sophie's all of her links down in the description below. If you guys want to go check her out, whether it's her YouTube channel or her podcast or her Instagram, feel free to go check her out. Sophie, it has been wonderful talking to you today.
Yes, it's been wonderful talking to you too. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been the Artists and Emotions Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Alexander Curtis, and I hope that through today's episode, you've been able to take something with you on your mental health journey, or your creative journey, or your business journey in any sense. But until next time, my name is Cody Alexander Curtis. This has been the Artists and Emotions Podcast, and I'll see you next time.